Hello, hello, friends. Come on in, come on in. We are getting ready to jump into today's class. Start the podcast that builds your exit plan. I'm your host, Nikayla Matthews Akome, and I am so happy to see you all here joining me. You could be anywhere on a Friday, beautiful Friday. I'm in New York. It's super, super nice outside. So I appreciate you. All right. So let's go ahead and share as you come in. And by the way, let me know where you're joining from. I always like to know who's in the building. Let me know how you heard about today's session. Start the podcast that builds your exit plan and frees you from the career that you have outgrown. Let me know how you heard about it. Okay. And we are going to jump into the actual lessons in a bit, my tips for you, but I want to make sure you understand who this class is for. And if you are confused about if you should be in the building, let you just feel calm and relax because you are in the right place for sure. If you feel burned out, if you feel uninspired, if you feel ready for a change in your career, then you belong here. If you want to use your voice and your expertise to open new opportunities outside of your 9 to 5, then you are in the right place. You belong here. And if you know you're meant for more, but you aren't sure how to make it happen, what you can possibly do next, you are in the right place. And finally, if you want to build a platform that makes you discoverable to the right people so that you can have new opportunities, you're in the right place. So quick check. Let me know if you can see my slides. Just type slide in the chat for me so I know that I'm not talking to myself and that you can see my slides. Slide. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Dominic. Rachel's joining us from Illinois. You saw an ad on Facebook. Wonderful. They're working. Joyce, welcome. You're from Dallas, Texas, and heard about the training on the show. Love it. Thank you. Listening to my Expansion Era series over on Side Hustle Pro podcast. Love it. Love it. Nadia in Sacramento, also on the podcast. Okay, cool. And Danny Marie, you host podcasting for newbies. Okay. Love it. Thank y'all for joining. All right. So let's continue. So, as I said, you're all in the right place. So, if you're in a career that pays the bills right now, but it is draining your energy and you want to build something of your own that opens new doors, then you are in the right room. And also, if you're ready to make your expertise, your story, your voice work for you instead of staying stuck in a career path that no longer feels aligned, also, you're in the right place. Our skills belong to us. Everything you have right now, you can use for you. So that's what we're going to get into. And then finally, you're in the right place if you know you're meant for more and you want to use podcasting, the oh so powerful tool of podcasting, as the bridge from where you are now to the career and life that you actually want. So, how do we do that? Well, after this class, you will be 100% clear on what it takes to run a podcast that creates the income and the opportunities that you want. And you'll know the 3 steps to turn your podcast into a platform that builds your exit plan this year. If you want an exit plan, you have to start building it now. It's now September 2025. If you want to be exiting in 2026, then you need to start building now. So I'm so glad that you're here today. And speaking of that, want to reintroduce myself to those who, you just came in via an ad. Quick background. So I'm Nikayla. In 2016, I launched a hit podcast, Side Hustle Pro. It's the first and only podcast to spotlight bold Black women entrepreneurs who've gone from side hustlers to full-time entrepreneurs. And I have grown my podcast, Side Hustle Pro, to over 10 million downloads, multiple 6 figures in sponsorship revenue each and every year. And I started my podcast as a side hustle when I was working full-time at NPR, leading the digital marketing for their top podcasts, like some of your favorites, How I Built This, Code Switch, Up First, and so many more. And then I grew my podcast to the point where in 2017, I left my corporate America career at NPR to run Side Hustle Pro, the media company, full time. Since then, I've taught over 1,000 podcasters to run their own podcast business. And it is my mission to help you, podcasters, corporate American survivors, entrepreneurs, side hustlers, turn their voice into income so that you can walk away from careers that no longer serve you. I want to give you the option Podcasting is the strongest option you have to pivot, to change, to exit paths that no longer serve you. And so I feel that is part of my mission and my calling to do that. So, and that's why I'm here today hosting this class. So, one last bit of housekeeping. We'll be here for about 60 minutes. We might go a little bit over. It'll be worth it, I promise. And to ask questions, do me a favor and use the Q&A box, not just the chat, and try to give me as much context as possible so that I can give you as thorough a response as possible. You're here to get some answers, right? So give me some context. And there will be a replay available, but only for 48 hours. So good for you for being here live. And I will be sharing the details of how you can get podcast coaching from me inside of my Podcast Moguls Group coaching program at the end of this class. So stick around for Q&A and more details on Podcast Moguls. All right. So let's take it back for a second. How did I become such an advocate for podcasting? How did I become a full-time podcaster? Well, it began 10 years ago for me. This was me back in May 2015. I posted this highlight reel over on Instagram and Twitter, and I look pretty successful, right? Those Mary Janes were so cute. But as with all highlight reels, you can't tell what's really going on behind this picture. At this point, I'm sitting in front of the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, graduating with my MBA, and inside, I was freaking out at this point because I was rejected. I didn't get the Google offer after my internship, and that's what's expected. So I was graduating with no job. I depleted a lot of my savings, living the grad school life, traveling, thinking I was going to land this six-figure job immediately after, and that didn't happen. And so I was moving back to DC to live with my boyfriend with no income. Womp, womp. So obviously I said, I need to get my life together. This is not me. This is not what I set out to do at this point in my life. I was, in my 30s. That wasn't cool. So I knew I wanted to build my personal brand. I knew that I needed to truly figure this thing out because that's what people were doing at the time. But like many of you, I wasn't sure what that entailed. So I started following some online branding coaches, right? I said, let me see who is ahead of me in this world, who knows it better than me. Here I have Amy Porterfield pictured and Maya Elias, all women that I invested in early in my journey to learn about personal branding. And they encouraged me to relaunch this tacky blog. It's still up. You can go over to KaylaKSpeaks.com right now to see my humble beginnings. All right. I will never take it down. I will always pay for the renewal because it's where I started. As you can see, I had content, but no purpose. But that's all right. The important thing was that I got started. If I didn't take that step back in 2015, I wouldn't be here today in 2025. I learned that you have to be willing to take the first step, even when you don't know where it will lead. So think about where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and think about the fact that your action to get to that place needs to start today. So I learned that the aha moment that you're looking for, it actually comes gradually. There is no aha moment. It comes gradually and with action. I always used to like to say, God shows us signs, but only in glimpses. And what I mean by that is I have so many classmates who they are just waiting for some epiphany of the business they should open one day, and then I'll be an entrepreneur. And I'm always reiterating to them, no, you have to start trying and testing now. The big idea is never coming. It comes gradually with signs along the way. So for me, my action was starting my blog. It was taking that action because after several months of blogging, I started to see a common thread. I loved sharing the stories of Black women side hustlers and entrepreneurs. All right. Rachel says, this is real. All right. There'll be pre-recorded meetings. And when you said my name, I got excited. Oh, yes, this is real. This is live. This is September 26, 2025, y'all. I love doing it live. I love seeing your responses. So I started my blog with no idea really what direction I was going in. And then I started to see a common thread. And that's when the idea for my podcast, Side Hustle Pro, was born. And a year before launching Side Hustle Pro, I didn't know what a podcast was. I didn't listen to podcasts. I don't know about y'all, but I didn't listen to podcasts. So it was very funny that I ended up launching one. But because there I was a year later, and in the first 7 days after launching Side Hustle Pro, I landed in the top charts. This is Side Hustle Pro on the left in the top marketing and business charts, number 10. This is Side Hustle Pro on the right, number 37 in business. Old logo, by the way. And if you have a keen eye, you'll also see that I'm above Amy Porterfield, one of the online educators who I had invested in learning from. So the student became the teacher. And Side Hustle Pro was even featured on Apple. Here it is on the left and new and noteworthy. Here it is in the bold women category. It was picking up steam. So I said, all right, let's go harder. I went hard on promotion that summer. I got t-shirts printed up. I went to every local conference, get together, Black Women Empowerment Summit that I could find. I was living in DC at the time. So everywhere you saw me that summer, I was in this uniform, t-shirt, pants, my little heels, because I realized something. I realized I was onto something. The show resonated because I was changing the narrative and I was showing a different picture of entrepreneurship than we were constantly being bombarded with. So it took off because finally so many women were seeing themselves in the narrative. And I realized that if I took this seriously, I could quit my job. But in order to quit my job, I would need income. I would need to replace my income. So I said, I want to do this. I knew I wanted to do this. So I started studying podcast monetization specifically. And one of the first things I wanted to study was sponsorship, since that was the buzzword that you always hear when you hear of podcasts. So I went to conferences and I invested in courses to learn how to pitch sponsors. At the time, this was back in like late 2016. Yeah, this was back in 2016 because I left in 2017. I invested $1,197 in a 2-day event sponsorship intensive. Notice I said event. It wasn't even podcast specific, but I was just so hungry to learn anything about how to pitch a sponsor that I invested in this. And that was a big investment for me at the time. Remember, I was still coming off of being unemployed and picking back up my cash reserves, savings, all of that. So I didn't take that investment lightly, but I said to myself, would this be worth it if I was able to make this money back? Would it be worth it if I was able to exceed how much I paid because I invested in the coaching to go out and get sponsorships? And that's what I did. So 6 months after launching my podcast, I pitched my very first sponsor cold, and I earned my first $4,000 podcast sponsorship contract from that pitch. First pitch, y'all, because I invested, I learned, and I applied what I learned. So I kept doing that on repeat. Every day I would go to Union Station on my lunch break and I would pitch sponsors or do a different aspect for my side hustle. And then by December 2017, I was able to quit my job to podcast full time. And the Side Hustle Pro OG is in the building. You might remember this episode back in December 2017 when I announced I quit. I quit. You could still go back and listen to it and see this post. So what happened next? Side Hustle Pro took off. It was featured on the Today Show. It was featured on Oprah Magazine and Forbes. And by the way, I didn't pitch any of these opportunities. The Today Show found me when they were searching for Side Hustle Pro experts. Oprah Magazine, same thing. And it just goes to show the power of what I'm going to teach you today about being discoverable, getting found, and making sure the podcast can be that bridge for you. So I went on and had the fortune of being inducted in 2022, inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. This was such a blessing and a full circle moment for me. So it all came because I started building my exit plan with the podcast. Again, I took that first step in 2015 so that 2022 could happen, so that all of these blessings could happen. I went from graduating with no job and no money to the Podcast Hall of Fame. And the truth is, if you are here today, right? If you're here today, you don't just want to build your exit plan. You don't just want to get paid to podcast. I know you're here because you want freedom too. And freedom looks like different things for everybody. I'm not saying go out and quit your job. Freedom looks like different things. So for you, Just freedom from the corporate hamster wheel, having some breathing room to know that this is not your only opportunity, source of income, right? Freedom from this fear of layoffs always hanging over your head or experiencing them. Freedom from financial uncertainty because of this market. Freedom to work and live on your own terms and not having people say, it's return to office time, right? You want that freedom. And I did too. So I wanted the freedom in my schedule and I started trying to figure it out. And I know that you have probably been trying to figure it out as well. You've been thinking, should I take podcasting more seriously? It looks like a lot of work. How do I grow a podcast? If you have one, how do I grow this? How do I actually make money from it? Is it worth all this effort? And how do I use this to shift my life path? Comment one if you've been wondering any of this. I'm just curious if you have felt any of these things. Nadia, you say one, love it. Tell me which one of the things have you been experiencing and feeling? Jacqueline says one. So yes, you get me. You understand. I remember feeling all of these things and I just knew I had to figure this out. So if you've tried starting a podcast already, posting on Instagram, posting on LinkedIn, dancing on TikTok, and it hasn't worked out, if the results haven't been great, I know you're tempted to start thinking, maybe I'm not cut out for this, or I don't know what I'm doing. Let me stop, or I need to stick to what I already know and do. Let me go apply for some more of these jobs. Let me get back to updating my resume, right? The results haven't been great because your mind is all over the place. And I don't blame you for that because there's so much noise out there. You don't know what to concentrate on first, last, second. Like it is so much, right? So here's the real reason why you haven't figured it out yet, how to build your exit plan, because you don't know the real power of podcasting. The real power of podcasting exists in these three things. Number one, it is the most powerful networking tool you didn't know you had. I podcast from my apartment. I have interviewed women all over the globe. My network is so rich now. And I don't mean rich in terms of dollars. I mean rich in terms of knowledge and wisdom that I'm able to pull from. And I don't take it lightly. I don't abuse any of these relationships, but it's such a blessing that at any given point, I can reach out to someone who I've interviewed on the show and say, hey, I would love to reconnect and run something by you or just get your ear on something, And 99% of people will say yes. 99% of people will say yes, if not 100%. And if they say no, it's probably scheduling, right? Scheduling issues. So that is number one, the real power. If you're trying to get anywhere in life and you can network via your podcast and you don't have to set up coffee chats and all this other stuff, your next opportunity will come to you. The other power of podcasting is it is your bridge from where you are to the career and business you want, one conversation at a time. When I started Side Hustle Pro, I actually didn't know that I would end up taking my media company full time. I was still waiting for that aha moment at first. I was like, what kind of business do I want to start? Let me talk to different women and figure out, should I start a retail apparel business? Should I start interior design? Like I was just trying to figure something out. Should I buy a laundromat? Right? There's so many different things you can do. But what was drawing me was continuing to teach what I know because I saw the power and how it changed people's lives when they got my knowledge. So that's what I was drawn to. But what about you? Your bridge is going to come to you through the conversations. The aha moments will come to you through these recurring conversations each and every week. And then finally, podcasts are your launch pad. It's your launch pad to sponsorships, to clients, to speaking gigs, and partnerships that fit your next chapter. Every podcaster I know has spoken on big stages. Every podcaster I know is either working on a book or has published a book. Every podcaster I know has opportunities for service-based businesses that they've started, either digital courses or digital books, and they have been able to tap into their community to truly understand what they would like them to develop and create a revenue stream for themselves. So it is such a beautiful launch pad because you get to create holistically and collaboratively with the people who listen to your show. So that's the real power. And if you don't realize what the real power is, you are focusing on the wrong thing as you think about starting, or if you've already started, it's not growing because you are focused on the wrong thing about it. Let me just tap in. Hey, Gabe. Gabe and I went to Michigan together, y'all, so you know who I'm talking to. Selena wants to know, can I actually make money from it? Yes. And we're going to get into all the different revenue streams you can look into. Joy says, yes, definitely in the stage of trying to grow my podcast. And then Nadia says, I really want to know how I can grow a podcast. I had it for 5 years, but I had to put it down for a number of years due to kids and COVID. I totally get it. So we're going to talk about all these things. So if you knew the real power of podcasting, you would stop playing and really prioritize your podcast. I know each and every one of you, and I'm not wagging my finger. I'm like, I can relate. I know this because I put off starting my podcast for so long. And if I had known that it would really change my life, I would have started sooner. I would have stopped pushing back my launch date because I was scared of how my voice sounded. I was scared of what my peers would say, right? But if you truly knew, you would quit playing and really prioritize it today. So thank you for being here and prioritizing it, because the truth is that you already have what it takes. You already have everything. You have your skills, you have your story, your lived experience, your voice. They are enough to start. You don't need this huge audience. You don't need a fancy studio or backdrop. You don't need a journalism degree. You just need the right steps to position your podcast as the bridge to your next chapter. So here are the 3 steps to turn your podcast into your exit plan. Let's get right into it. And please remember to drop your questions in Q&A because I cannot wait to hear and answer your questions. Brittany Jones says, I've been procrastinating for almost 4 years. Oh no, we have to stop that. You know where you could be in the next 4 years, Brittany? Let's get into it. So step 1 is you need to build a podcast that gets found by the right people. So, what holds most people back is starting these casual, just chatting podcasts with their friends and then giving it a vague title or a clever inside joke or maybe even an industry term, right? That no one is actually searching for. And what also holds most people back is staying broad so you don't box yourself in, so you don't, pigeonhole yourself, but the whole time you're actually boxing out your audience instead. No, no bueno. And what also holds most people back, especially now, I see so many people jumping into in-person video podcasting head, toes, everything all in and pouring all this money into gear and setups without a clear plan to grow or monetize. So then you're already in the red and you don't have any kind of plan and any kind of foundation in place to make money. And you can't do that. I don't want you to do that. So that's the number one mistake that keeps most podcasters stuck on that hamster wheel of just creating content and creating content instead of building an exit plan, instead of reaping the rewards of all their effort. And here's why it holds you back. People who need your show can't even find you. If you have a client-based business, especially, your future clients need to be able to find you. When they search those keywords that they're looking for, your show needs to come up. And by the way, this is not like Google rigged algorithm. If you have the keywords, your show will show up on your podcast apps. So it holds you back if it's unclear what your show is really about, and it holds you back if you end up spending a lot of money on the wrong things. And again, you start out in the red. So here's what to do instead. Here's how to build a podcast that opens doors. Step 1, your first order of business is to get found, okay? Your podcast can help the right people discover you, your story, and your expertise. Here's what I mean by this. So this is Erica M. McAfee. She joined Podcast Moguls a few years ago, and this was her podcast when she joined, the Erica M. McAfee podcast. And I see industry leaders making this mistake as well. You think, oh, I want to grow my personal brand, so I should name the show after me, right? Wrong. Who can tell me in the comments, what do you think is like the main thing wrong with this, especially based on what I just shared? What do you think is wrong with naming your show after you? Let me wait for the comments to come in. No one knows to search for Erica. Exactly. And no one knows what it's about. Oh, y'all paid attention. Thank you. It's not too broad, right? Yes, all of that. It lacked clarity on audience and mission. It was harder for the right listeners to find her. And she was just focused on creating episodes and getting the content out there like a lot of people are. They're just focused on having these conversations and not on building a media platform. So Erica, as you can tell by the episode, her show is about pregnancy and infant loss and grief and navigating that. As you might experience yourself when you go through something like this, you need to talk to someone. You need to find your tribe of people who've experienced it. So she came into the program, went through the modules, and rebranded to the Sisters in Loss podcast, signaling to Black women who call themselves sisters, right? We call ourselves sisters in loss who have experienced grief and loss. The colors, the vibrant patterns are a nod to African American heritage, and you can still include your name on the logo. And one thing to emphasize, your name on your show, it doesn't have to encompass everything, but it starts signaling, then your description and your episode titles rounds out that work of helping people to know what your show is about and find you and then tune in. So this rebrand allowed for more clear, mission-driven positioning. It instantly speaks to the audience she wants to reach, and it became discoverable, leading to more downloads, opportunities, and partnerships. So when your audience knows exactly who you serve and why, your podcast stops being just content. You get off that hamster wheel and it starts becoming a platform for growth and income. This also happened to my student, Lori Tharps. She came in with a podcast called My American Melting Pot. She did what a lot of people also do if you come in and you already have a brand or a blog and you're like, I want to name my podcast after that. But that's not how podcasting works. This medium has to be clear. So, as you can probably see by the artwork, she was trying to talk to everybody. No, you don't know what this show is about. It literally could be about so many different things. It lacked a clear focus and audience alignment. The episodes covered many topics, making it harder for the right listeners to connect. They might tune into one episode, but not the next. And she was just focused on producing content again, instead of building a growth strategy and building out a platform. But through going through Podcast Moguls, Lori actually ended up scrapping that podcast altogether and starting a brand new podcast called Read, Write, and Create, which is a direct client magnet for her writing clients. So it's clear niche positioning that speaks directly to her target audience. It signals like, hey, this is a hub for writers. This is a community for writers. It had streamlined branding and messaging, which made the show instantly more discoverable because as soon as you click over to the description and the episodes, Lori, the logo does the job of piquing your interest, and then Lori makes it clear, this is who it's for, this is what we talk about. And so it led to stronger audience engagement and opened the door for growth opportunities and for her writing practice and writing retreats that she now runs full time. So when your podcast speaks directly to the people you want to reach, it creates this platform that attracts opportunities and then it drives impact. Nidia says, thanks to that rebrand, I could find Lori, and now I'm in her writing community. Yeah, Nidia's in the building too. Nidia also went to Michigan, y'all. Fun fact, we were roommates at Michigan. As you can see, Michigan holds a great, beautiful place in my heart. So the truth of the matter is that podcasts that don't make money and aren't discoverable. If you hear someone saying that their podcast is not making money, or if you're in this class today and your podcast is not making money, I'm willing to bet that it just isn't discoverable enough. And the people who need your message the most can't find you. So you have to make it easy for people to find you. If people can't find your podcast, they can't listen. So they definitely can't buy from you, right? So if you search for Black Women Entrepreneur Podcast, Black Women Side Hustle Podcast, or Side Hustle Podcast, my face, my name, my logo will come up. And again, this is how the Today Show found me. I thought it was like like spam or something. I just couldn't believe they were reaching out to me and that they found me independently. But I did this foundational work not knowing where it would lead me. And that's what's so beautiful about this process. So, your podcast name, your podcast description, and your episode titles are your discoverability power tools. Use them wisely, okay? Put these in your toolbox and use them wisely. Discovery drives downloads, and downloads drive income. That's the podcast math equation. All right, now let's get into step 2. If y'all are fired up and following along, can you put a fire emoji for me? Let me know. Let me know you're enjoying this. Joy says, "Period. I'm working on getting my website up and running in the next few months." Thank you, Danny, for the fire emojis. Whoop whoop. And I just want to go back to what Nidia said for a minute. So Nidia is a client of Lori Tharp's. That's what she's saying. And thanks to Lori's rebrand, she found her and she's now in her writing community. Isn't that beautiful? Like, that is the power of truly honing in on, who do I want to speak to? How can I title it and make sure they find me? So, speaking of being found, now the next step is growing your audience by deeply understanding who they are and what they need. So, what holds most people back from in this step is pouring all their energy into launching their podcast and then barely promoting it each week. You'd be surprised at how much people obsess over those starter steps, like, my logo needs to be perfect, my website needs to be perfect, and all this stuff. And they have not invested time in figuring out, who am I even talking to? And what also holds most people back is skipping the work of truly getting to know their audience, what they care about, where they spend time, what they're searching for. You need to know who's listening to your show down to their name, age, where they live, what they do for a living, what shows they watch on Netflix. It has to be that detailed. So when you do that, then you are able to truly treat them like a person. But what holds most people back is treating their audience like this faceless entity, this faceless group, instead of like real people with specific goals, specific challenges, and interests. And here's the smarter approach: you have to understand your audience to grow your audience. It's as simple as that. So I want you to meet my podcast moguls alum, Shanitria of the Blunt Blowing Mama podcast, one of my favorite podcast names of all time. Okay. You already know what this is about, right? As soon as you hear that name, you already know, okay, when you see the logo. So Shanitria grew her audience by using the Side Hustle Pro OMG formula, which I teach inside of Podcast Moguls. She used it to clarify her message, build content that resonated deeply with her audience, and position her podcast for explosive growth. So this is her Instagram profile today. But before she even did that, here's the OMG formula in action. This is what Shanitria wrote on her own Instagram story one day when I was promoting this very class. Unprompted, unsolicited, she shared, Side Hustle Pro is an amazing podcast coach. As someone who is one of her podcast mogul students, I can truly say she helped me get Blunt Blowing Mama podcast off the ground. Grow BBM's IG page. I only had 3,000 followers when I started her program, and through her techniques, I've grown organically to over 21,000 engaged followers. Because of Podcast Moguls, I was able to find my tribe, and she even gave me helpful advice when I started BBM clothing line too. She really knows her stuff. And if you want to really build a successful podcast, then her Podcast Moguls program is worth the investment. So, unprompted, she said this because she grew from 3,000 to 21,000 Instagram followers by applying the strategies learned inside of Podcast Moguls. And she didn't stop there. As you can see, her audience kept growing as she stayed consistent, and she's now at over 120,000 followers. The student has exceeded the teacher. She has more followers than me. She's grown an engaged community of 120,000 plus, who not only discover her podcast, but also listen, share, and invest in her workshops and membership community. You need to be visible. You need to be discoverable in order for people to listen. And social media is part of your toolkit to be found and to connect with the right audience. So, podcasts that struggle to make money often have another thing in common: they don't truly know their audience. If you don't know who you're talking to and you don't know what they need, it's nearly impossible. I'm going to say, scratch that. It's impossible to sell products, secure sponsors, or grow your business. So before we get into step 3, I'm actually going to go back one and really hone in on this point. And I want to know, is there anybody else who can relate to this? Give me a 2, since we just went through step 2. If you understand this, Joyce says incredible. Danny says BRB because she has toddlers. I understand. I'm only doing this because they're at school right now. So I see some 2s coming in. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you. All right. So now let's get into step 3. Whoop. I hope y'all can't see my contacts. That just popped up out of nowhere. Step 3, start small and test different income sources and track what resonates the most with your audience. So I love this step because I am dispelling a couple of myths here, and let's get into those. So a myth that holds most people back is that they can't be seen trying and failing. They have this fear of being seen trying and failing. And the truth is that when you have that fear, most times you have 1 or 2 people in mind. You have someone specific in mind that you are like, what are they going to think? And today, I want you to give yourself permission to stop living for that person. I want you to identify them by name in your thoughts and literally say, I'm going to stop making decisions as if you pay my bills and as if you can live my life for me. Stop. I don't care if it's your mom, your sister, your best friend. Today, I want you to stop because you need to try and fail in order to make this money. You need to try and fail in order to exit a path that no longer serves you. Another thing that holds most people back is this fear that no one will buy. And let me, relieve your worries here. Yes, you're going to launch some things and no one will buy and you will live. Next, next question. Yes, that is going to happen. I have launched many item and many a test that that got 0 purchases and I lived, and it's okay because I learned. Okay. And then finally, what holds most people back is this fear of wasting money. And that's why you get coaching, so you don't spend money on the wrong things. I'm here to say, no, do not buy that $300, no, not even $300, $600 camera, because you're going to be too intimidated to use it. And then you're not going to start your show. That's what I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you, do you even know who your perfect listener is? Let's figure that out first. So that is how you don't waste money. You make sure you invest in coaching. So here's your next move. Launch one offer, start testing, and let your audience show you what sells. So launch your first moneymaker. All right. And here are the moneymakers. Now, here's where we get into some of the top revenue streams that podcasters can use. So you can launch an ebook, a paid ebook or guide. This is one of the ones that I have tested. Think about everything that people have ever asked you for. Think about how you could package it in a way that, and a no-brainer price that would make them want to buy. And if you want to take it a step back before you even do the paid version, if you just want to get your feet wet in fulfillment, like, okay, how do I create it? How do I get the email system set up? And then make sure they get the product once they've purchased or once they've signed up. If you want to get really through that process and not feel so intimidated, you can launch a freebie first and then a paid guide. But I always recommend testing out one of these as you're getting started. And most of us podcasters, content creators have at some point in life created an ebook or a guide for our listeners and viewers and content audience. Another moneymaker is you can offer one-on-one coaching in an area of expertise. The reason why I love this is, number one, tools like Calendly make it so easy to quickly set up calendar slots that work for you. And then you can start out by reaching out to your network, people who've already asked you for this thing, and just let them know, hey, I get so many questions about this. I'm opening up a couple of slots. And so you get to get your feet wet in understanding what people want from you as you brainstorm what could be a future offer that you provide. I love providing one-on-one coaching because you truly get to know your audience and what they need and what's holding them back. So This is an example of one-on-one coaching that I offer. I offer podcast VIP sessions and so much more. And then after a while, you're going to run out of bandwidth for one-on-ones because you're going to realize like, hey, I know a lot and a lot of people want to talk to me one-on-one, but I don't have the bandwidth for it. So you can think about launching a course. And here's what I love about courses, right? So at least two of my Michigan classmates are in the building today. And here's the thing about life. You want continuing education. That's why we went to Michigan to get our business degree. But after you go through college and let's say some of us go to graduate school, it's like, what next? Do we just know everything now? No, we need to continue to supplement that education with continuing education. So why not create a course that can help somebody else in something they need to be educated on in their business? I love courses. I don't think courses are controversial, but if for any reason you feel that way, that's how you need to think about it. People need continuing education. That's why Podcast Moguls was created, because my audience kept asking me as I started to grow the podcast, how are you doing this? How do you market? How do you this? And I was like, all right, let me put it in a place where we can all talk about it each and every month. You can get the course lessons, but then we can also have our live group coaching and we can talk in our private community so that you can continually have this coaching on this process. Same thing with Master the Gram. People wanted to know, how did you grow your Instagram audience and how do you get all these opportunities? All right, boom, let's create a course so that I can help multiple people. So that's another revenue stream to consider. You can even create products that your listeners love and need. Often when people hear products, they think about merch. So I'm sharing Shanitria and her BBM shop online. That's when she created these shirts that she loved anyway, and people kept asking her for them. So she started to sell them. But there are all sorts of products that other podcasters have created. You can even be an affiliate for products that you know and love, because that's one way to take the actual creation off your plate, but still make some money. And then, of course, there is sponsorship. So you can pitch brands that your listeners will love and need. Or if you're doing a good enough job at getting found, the brands will come to you. This is what happened to Tolu Garcia. She is a Podcast Moguls alum. Her podcast is the UI Narrative Podcast. And this is a screenshot of what she posted herself on Instagram. She said how it started, and she's sharing herself in the recording booth for her podcast, UI Narrative. And how it's going is Google reached out to her to sponsor her show. Why? Because she started a podcast all about user interface design and people who work in UI. And they were trying to get in front of this particular niche and attract more wonderful, really gifted UI employees to Google. So they were looking for podcasts like this. And so at this point, she was about 6 months into podcasting. She came into Podcast Moguls with just an idea. 6 months later, Google was pitching her because she did her foundational steps and she was found. So not only can you pitch brands, but you will get pitched by them. And then one of the other things that you can do is you can use your podcast as an attraction magnet to attract clients. So this is what Lori did. We already touched on this and how, because she rebranded and made it clear who she's for and what she does and the services she provides, Nidia in this class was able to find her and join her writing community. And this is what Lori had to say about her process. She said, I launched a podcast using my moguls training that is pretty much a sales funnel to attract creative writing students and coaching clients. I am seriously following the Nikayla Matthews Okome methodology, and I'm continuing to see results and growth in my business. Later this year, I'll be hosting my first writing retreat in the south of Spain. How incredible. And by the way, Lori was able to quit her full-time job to do this full-time and move to Spain. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But that is the power of testing your moneymaker. As you can see, there's so many possibilities. The last one we'll talk about is creating a paid subscription for your podcast. So paid subscriptions can be hosted on platforms like Patreon or other platforms of your choice. And that's when you decide to create bonus content for your audience, or maybe you want to talk about some things behind doors. So for Shanitria, she knows that some of her audience, they're not comfortable commenting in public or having a conversation that can be visible by eyes they'll never know. So they want to be a part of a safe space, a paid private safe space where they can have these conversations safely. And so that's why she created her community. You can pay a subscription to join and get the information. And there are other podcasters that you know and love. A few weeks ago, I talked about Joe Budden's ecosystem in podcasting and how his paid subscriber community is what drives his million+ business a month for his podcast. So the opportunities are out there, y'all. So if anybody was wondering, can I make money podcasting? The answer is a resounding yes. And you have to start now. You have to start now. Podcasting is hot now. And here's how you start. All right. You start, you choose one, and then you evaluate and you grow it. Your first money maker, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all buttoned up. It just needs to offer value, offer education, be created with integrity, right? You're offering real value and real education, created with integrity, and be created with the audience's best interest in mind. You have those four things, go forth and conquer. All right. Evaluate and grow, and let your audience tell you what you should keep as one of your revenue streams. So you don't test these all at one. You start with one that makes the most sense for you. The important thing is to get feedback early and often. All right. And that's why we can't wait, because we don't want to be seen launching and failing. We can't wait. The feedback is what we need. We need that feedback to grow. So this week, start thinking about what's going to be your first moneymaker that you launch with. All right. So improve your offers after that. So you get feedback, you improve your offers. Podcasts that don't make money, they don't test enough. They don't test enough, and they give up after the first few streams don't work. If I had done that, I wouldn't be here today. I would still be working at NPR if I didn't start testing back in 2016 and 2017 once I had launched. So you can't make money if you're not putting in effort, testing, evaluating, and growing. This is exactly why I created Podcast Moguls Group Coaching, by the way, because I want to help aspiring podcasters to understand how to build more than a hobby podcast, but to actually build a media platform that pays you, to build a platform that you can monetize. So I want to help you build a podcast that becomes your exit plan so you can create the freedom, the income, and the impact you've been dreaming about. It's way more, it's much more than money. It's much more than money. When I think about the impact of Side Hustle Pro and the stories and the people who have come to me and say, hey, because of you, I finally took my side hustle seriously and I was able to quit my job. Or because of you, I finally took my side hustle seriously and I've been flown out to speak at all these conferences, and it's really bolstered my work profile and gotten me a raise and a new role. Countless stories like that, all because I took a chance and launched this podcast and stopped being scared of what people would think, or if it looks like, weird. And yeah, for some people, they don't like it, and that's okay. It's not for them. But the impact you've been dreaming about, it is achievable. All right. So inside of my Podcast Moguls Group Coaching, I teach you my proven strategies to turn your voice into your next chapter and your next income stream using a podcast. So, option one, if you're thinking about podcasting right now, you can. You can do option one. You can keep trying to DIY your podcast with tips gathered all over social media and YouTube. The only problem with that is that not everyone you don't know what everyone's results really are. And so sometimes people get up, especially on TikTok, and they talk so confidently, they don't know what they're talking about. All right. So that's option one, proceed with caution. Option two is to decide to make podcasting a priority and get my coaching to know exactly which steps to take. So you are all invited to join Podcast Moguls. I'd love to share a little bit more with you before we jump into Q&A. So Podcast Moguls is for you if you want to turn your podcast or your podcast idea into the foundation of your exit plan. If you want to learn my proven strategies to grow, monetize, and leverage your show into real opportunities, you will get that inside of Podcast Moguls. So you get direct access to my business strategies. And by business strategies, let me be specific. I mean, if you want to know how to launch a show, get more listeners, get those listeners onto your email list, create offers, test the offers, get my feedback on the offers, and then get people to buy from you. Those are the business strategies that I teach you about because that's what I've done. So, posting on social media is one thing. A lot of people think that's where it stops. That's where it begins. The goal is to get them on your email list. The goal is to be able to continue to speak to people. I don't always send my newsletter consistently, but every time I send it, it's consistently the highest open rates, the highest click rates, the highest response rates. Just being able to have that continued conversation after the episode with my listeners, it's just the most beautiful thing. So I teach podcasters how to do this. I teach you my podcast frameworks, and I do this all through monthly live coaching. So we meet monthly, we're live, you join on Zoom, video on and off, up to you. And then you're able to ask me your questions and get live feedback. And in between that, each and every week, you can send me assets, things you want me to look over, and I'll give you my feedback on it. I will reply to you, sometimes with a voice note, sometimes with an email reply. I will edit directly. You get not even like endless access to my knowledge and my feedback because I'm so passionate about helping people go from this just hamster wheel of creating content to actually being a part of the creator economy and making money. All right. So you get that through life coaching, you get that through our private community and through my weekly critique system. And then you get to be surrounded by a network of ambitious podcasters who are growing and monetizing and building freedom together. So you get to stop guessing. Hey, does this work? Does that work? Should I try this? Should I try that? And start executing on a clear, tested roadmap. So I'm going to share the link with you. But first, I just want to share the breakdown of the program. Okay. It has three parts. Part one is the course itself, the skills lessons. So you get a 9-module podcast transformation curriculum, which includes video lessons, tutorials, templates, swipe files, and guides. What I mean by that are you get the exact emails I send to people to pitch them to be on the show. You get the emails that the media kits that I've sent to sponsors to get sponsorship. Part two is the community. So that's our private community where you can ask questions and get answers outside of our group coaching calls. You can post your wins, you can post your challenges and get my feedback. And then part three are those group coaching calls. So we meet monthly for video group coaching calls with me, not someone else. You receive personal guidance from me during these calls. So the guidance that I'm about to get into in our Q&A, you will get that monthly. And here's just some of the beginning of the 9-module podcast transformation. So, of course, we start out with the fundamentals because, as you saw from today's tips, the fundamentals are key. So, we start with how to choose or improve your podcast topic and how to choose or improve your podcast name and logo. We get into that perfect listener. We get into the equipment, we get into the recording and the editing, of course. We get into the actual tech stack part of it. But then we get into the workflow so that you can stay consistent. We get into the road to launch, what you really need to launch with a bang. We get into the podcast audience. So, how you're going to grow your own audience using Instagram, which is still one of the most impactful audiences and platforms, audience building platforms out there right now for podcasters. We get into Facebook and Instagram advertising 101. I use very simple ads that are effective and they work. If you're here because you saw my ad, I teach you that inside of Podcast Moguls, and you don't need a huge budget. From the day I launched Podcast Moguls, I made sure that I was amplifying my organic content with a little bit of ad dollars each and every time I dropped an episode. And I'll show you how, because that's a big hack I use to grow so fast. Then I get into the email list. The email list is clutch. If you need a cash injection in your business, you need to have an email list. If you want to have a revenue stream that is robust outside of your 9 to 5, you need to have an email list. So I will teach you how to grow your podcast email list. And then finally, I'll teach you how to position your show for a sponsorship, including a pricing calculator so you realistically know what you can charge, what add ons you can include so that you can get to a price that you want to charge. And then we'll get into creating that winning sponsorship pitch. So it's an exhaustive program, exhaustive in a good way, meaning I am thorough. I cover a lot, and anything you have a question about, you can ask. And this is what Shirley of the She's Got Drive podcast had to say about podcast moguls. She said, I had at that point 25,000 downloads. And in the last 3 months, I'm now at 46,000 downloads. Her strategy absolutely works. So when Shirley entered Podcast Moguls, her show was 25,000 downloads. That was where it was at. And then within 3 months, she was almost doubling her downloads. That is the impact of getting my marketing strategy inside of Podcast Moguls. And let's say you're like Fritz, right? Fritz is another Podcast Moguls alum. He launched a Coin Gamma podcast inside of Podcast Moguls. And Fritz is a cool, chill guy who he wasn't looking to be an influencer or anything like that. He had a good job. He wasn't even necessarily looking for sponsorship. But even when you're not looking for it, the same thing happened to Fritz that happened to Tolu. People came knocking on his doors because I teach you how to get found. And once you can get found, you can't go back. So he wrote, I was able to speak at over 5 conferences last year, even being flown in internationally to speak at conferences. It all came because of the podcast. That's what I'm talking about. That's the power of Podcast Moguls. So let's get into the costs and the investments. So inside of Podcast Moguls, you are getting monthly live coaching sessions. In and of itself, that's $4,000 because a one-on-one session with me is $1,000. And let's say you only came to 4 sessions, which, by the way, you have lifetime access, so you get way more than 4 sessions. But if you only came to 4, that's already a $4,000 value. Then you're getting annual community access, which there are podcast communities that charge $197 per month every single year. It's not a lifetime fee. So you're paying that every single year. And that's $2,364 annually. And you're getting that kind of access inside of Podcast Moguls for way less than that. Plus, you're getting all of my sponsorship pitch letters and my media kits, which you already know. To learn about sponsorship, I invested $1,197 just in learning how to pitch sponsors. But you're getting my customized sponsorship pitch letters and media kits tailored to the podcast industry inside of Podcast Moguls. Plus, you're getting my guest pitch templates, the emails that I have used to land amazing guests each and every year inside of Podcast Moguls. Plus, you also, as a bonus, get Master the Gram. So that course by itself is $297, but it's included inside of Podcast Moguls for all Podcast Mogul students. And the Goal Getter Action Plan mini course, which is $98 by itself, standalone price, is also included in Podcast Moguls. So Goal Getter Action Plan is my system of how I was able to side hustle, my productivity system of how I was able to side hustle at NPR and still grow this huge platform outside of work. I show you how I did it, how I balance, how I juggle. And so I want you to have that to make sure that you are setting up your life to accommodate what you're about to build. And if you're not keeping track, the total value here is $8,553. The regular price of Podcast Moguls is $3,000, but I am not going to charge you that. That is if you were to go to the website and never come to this webinar, and you would just see that price. But the promotional price for coming here and being a part of this masterclass today is $997 if you pay in full. You can also do the 4 payment plan. It is only a few dollars difference. So I don't penalize you for doing the payment plan. I love payment plans. So you can join today for just $250. The payment plan will go for 4 months. So you can get in and start getting to work today. Like I told you, the action starts now. Start the action now. The aha moments will come gradually and in glimpses. I'm going to go ahead and drop this link for y'all. All right. I'm going to drop this link for y'all. I hope it's clickable. Okay, hold on. All right, Gabe, you're in. Let's go. Welcome, Gabe. Okay, I'm going to stop the share for 1 second to make sure I give you the clickable link, y'all, to make sure that you can come on in like Gabe, because Gabe, I see what you're doing, by the way, Gabe, and I love it. I'm going to give you the non-pretty links. I'm going to give you the direct link to make sure you have no issues. Join Podcast Moguls. Gabe, I was going to say, so Gabe is doing an amazing job. You're doing, okay, like apartment real estate, right? Like you're buying huge units, right? Is what I understand. And that is incredible. First of all, people want to know how to get into that, Gabe. I want to know how to get into that low key. Syndications. Yes, syndications. And it's like, if you can be the guy that people come to for this knowledge, I mean, the opportunities, I would love to help you. So welcome, Gabe. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. All right. So joining Podcast Moguls is for you. This is what you'll see. Oh, no, I think you're actually, you guys have seen my slides, right? For a second, I was over on the Podcast Moguls registration page to give y'all the link. So let's talk about the program a little bit more. Like I said, pay in full $997, four monthly payments of $250 is the payment plan. And as you can see, side by side, each plan, you get the monthly live coaching sessions, annual community access, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits, my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. And what I really love about podcasts is, you saw it just now, right? When I was speaking to Gabe, for most people, even if you've gone to school with them, even if you're connected with them on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, people are not going to your LinkedIn profile every single day. You have made so many career moves in your life, and people are not keeping up with these things unless you continue to speak about them. How do you continue to speak about them? Well, if you have a podcast, it makes it really easy, because each and every week you can talk about your episode. You can break things down. People can tune in on their commute. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me, blast from the past, because of something I said on a podcast episode. So it is the best way to update your community and get future clients. Oh, and speaking of that, there are some fast action bonuses if you enroll in the next 48 hours. So I want you to come on in and get these bonuses. So first of all, you will receive a one-on-one phone call with me, the first 5 people only to register, so you can finally quit playing and get your podcast into the world. So for taking action today, that is part of your fast action bonus. Rachel says, please drop. Okay, make sure you're putting your question in the Q&A. Joyce, you're so funny. Michaela, how does it feel being that girl? It feels wonderful. No, thank you, Joyce. So let's go over the fast action bonuses real quick, because if you're on the fence, if you are thinking about this, get yourself the fast action bonus and we can work through your thoughts. Okay. So first of all, it's a one-on-one phone call with me. Then it's my exact podcast workflow template. So that is how you're going to streamline your production and publish consistently without overwhelm. You are not going to overthink this, and you are not going to stay stuck. All right. We are going to get into the exact workflow you need. Then I will give you my podcast equipment starter kit so you can podcast from anywhere. Do you have client site visits? One of my podcast coaching clients, she is a travel food podcast. She covers different events in the food industry, so she's always on the road. You need equipment that can sound good from anywhere, and that's what I cover inside of the podcast equipment starter kit. Because I also don't want you to ever feel like, oh, I can't record an episode. My studio's closed right now. No, you can record at 3 a.m. if you need to from home. Then we're going to get into my podcast cold email pitches. So these are the pitches that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship. This is my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. Like Fritz, I also got flown out to Barbados and was, all expense paid. It was wonderful. And it's because of a pitch I sent to someone I didn't even know, cold email, and it worked. I love that trip. And the last thing is my 5 5-day branding blitz. So these are the strategies I use to land in the top charts in week 1 of launching my show. Again, that was me, top 37 in business, top 10 in marketing, all because of these steps. And I share them with you as a fast action bonus. So go ahead and head over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls so you can snag them. And let me know when you join so that I can whoop whoop shout you out. Whoop de doo. Wink if you know where that's from. All right, so just real quick recap of the fast action bonuses as we head on into Q&A, all right? So it's the one-on-one call with me so you can jumpstart your process, the first 5 people only. It's your podcast workflow template so you can streamline production and publish consistently without burnout. It's your podcast equipment starter kit. So this is my curated list of affordable, high quality gear at all price points. So you sound like a pro from day one. It's my cold email pitches, the exact pitches that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship and my first international speaking gig. And it's my 5-day branding blitz, the strategy that landed me in the Apple Podcast top charts in week 1. And remember to drop those questions in Q&A. I'll come back to the chat after, but Q&A helps me streamline through the chatter and see only questions. So copy and paste those over to Q&A for me. All right. Now, I know what it's like before you invest in something, right? I know that pause some of you might be feeling like, should I? Well, I'm going to go back to that question I asked myself back when I was thinking about the sponsorship event, sponsorship intensive. This is the question. You might have heard me say it. This is the exact question and decision making process that I use. I asked myself, would it be worth it to you if? So for you, you can say, would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you build your exit plan? Would being able to live on your own terms with the kind of freedom you're dreaming of be worth it to you? Yes? Then head on over to sidehustlepro.co, that's Podcast Moguls, and join because that is what's possible for you. That's what happened to Lori of the Read, Write, and Create podcast. She says, I quit my full-time job as a tenured professor and moved to Spain in 2021. This is someone who had a guaranteed job. Do you understand what, I don't know if everyone knows what a tenured professor means. It means it's basically impossible to get fired. You have to work really hard to get fired. A guaranteed job. And she was able to quit that job. She proved to herself that she could match her academic salary with her side hustle. She used all the lessons she learned in Podcast Moguls to make a plan, work the plan, right? So she paid off her debt. She stashed money in savings. She moved to Spain in the middle of the pandemic, and she hasn't looked back since. And the secret to all of this was not only did she discover ghostwriting, right? But she launched a podcast using her moguls training that is pretty much a sales funnel to attract creative writing students and coaching clients, including media in today's masterclass. So she says that I am seriously following the Nikayla Matthews Akome methodology, and I'm continuing to see results and growth in my business. Later this year, I'll be hosting my first writing retreat in the south of Spain. How many of you would like to host a retreat? I personally would love to host one in Jamaica. I'm from Jamaica, if you don't know. So I have visions of continued impact and experiences that I want to create in my life and not be confined to just one career path. That's the beauty of having an exit plan. And that's the beauty of having a podcast create that exit plan for you. Would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you land major sponsors for your podcast? Yes. Would getting approached with sponsorships be worth it to you? Yes. Then you need to come to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. And I say this with so much seriousness and urgency for you because, again, look at where I was 10 years ago. Look at where I am today. Now, 10 years might sound like a lot of time, but it's going to go like that. It's going to go like that. And I don't want you to be looking up in 5 years or 10 years and say, oh man, like I wish I had started sooner. Start today. So this is what happened to Tolu. She said it, how I started was coming into the program, starting my podcast, how it's going. Google is approaching me with sponsorship. Tolu came into Podcast Moguls with just an idea. She had different things she thought, should I launch a podcast about this? Should I launch it about that? And through going through the module on refining your topic, she landed on UI interface and UI narrative because she wanted to talk about her career path, but talk to more people of color in that path. And sure enough, Google came knocking. It's what's possible. Tolu is no different than you and I. It is what's possible. So the only way to learn, though, is through action. So that is part of the power of Podcast Moguls. This is Nia. She launched a podcast called Black Wall Street 1921. So for all of you who might be thinking, I can't launch a podcast on what I really want to podcast about, it's too controversial. Well, her podcast chronicles the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, and it passed 100,000 downloads in 4 months. She says, when I started the project, I didn't know how it would be received because, let's face it, talking about race in America, let alone the worst incident of racial violence in America, is not easy. Now, the popularity of her podcast prompted BBC News to reach out to her, interview her, and produce a 4-minute short video with her narrating the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Again, how incredible is that? Podcast, attraction magnet for opportunity. I need the handshake emoji on this slide in the future. Like, opportunity, no, podcast, opportunity, yes, let's meet. That is how it works. That's the power of Podcast Moguls. I'm helping you make that connection to your next opportunity. So I invite you to join Podcast Moguls today and grab those fast action bonuses before we jump into Q&A. Here again are your options: one payment of $9.97 or 4 monthly payments of $250. Here's everything again that you're going to get: my monthly live coaching sessions valued at $4,000, my annual community access valued at $2,364, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kit. I invested $1,197 in learning the land of sponsorships. I could easily have charged that for the program alone, but that's included inside of the price. You get my pitch templates, which people standalone sell those for $597 and above. Plus, you're getting Master the Gram, which by itself is $297, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan, which by itself is $98. So all of this value is packed into Podcast Moguls. I pride myself on packing a lot of value into Podcast Moguls because I truly want you to be able to run your own podcast media platforms and have those opportunities. So you can pay in full or choose the 4-payment plan. No penalty at all to you. Choose what works best for you today. And then come on over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. All right. So grab those fast action bonuses. And now let's get into Q&A. All right. Jumping over to Q&A. Boom. And I'm going to stop the replay at this time. Actually, I'll keep the replay up. If you couldn't be here for the class live, shout out to you. And here are some replay questions. All right. Joy says, are you able to share what metrics you had when you got your first sponsor? Do you think someone needs a specific minimum amount of listeners, downloads, et cetera, before pitching to brands? So I believe I have to go back. It's in another presentation, but I believe I might have been at about maybe 25,000 total, between 25,000 and 50,000 downloads total might have been where I was. And that's total for every episode when I pitched. And yes, you should have a minimum of something. You can use your best platform. Like, let's say your Instagram is your best platform. Then you can structure sponsorship around that. Everyone should be thinking about multi-channel sponsorship offers these days, not just one thing, because it's very rare when you're starting out as a podcaster that your numbers alone are the most impressive thing about you. So I was pitching not just the show, but my newsletter and my Instagram audience and all of that as well, to show how well-rounded I was and where I would showcase their brand. Danny Marie says, speaking of networking, what's the best way to send a business proposal your way? That is so funny. Well, Danny, I know you had to hop off. If you catch the replay, just email me hi@sidehustlepro.co. Selena says, what if you don't have a podcast idea? That is a-okay, Selena. Tolu came in with just an idea, and you see where it led her to launching the UI narrative and getting sponsored by Google. So inside of the Refine Your Topic lesson, you will be able to refine all of your different ideas swirling in your brain into one topic that can have a thread that weaves in different topics, but makes it clear what your show is about. Jacqueline Ash says, how long does it usually take to go through the 17 lessons? You know what? I'm going to break that out differently because I see that it looks like so much. It's really 9 modules. So like one module might have 2 of those lessons, and the lessons are all shorter than 10 minutes. So it is very digestible. You get these lessons, then you have the homework. The homework is a little longer because you have to actually take action and flesh out your ideas, get on the phone with your perfect listener, and those kind of things. So, what are the total hours of the entire course? The hours of the course are dependent on you. It is self paced. So, one person might complete their perfect listener calls in 1 week, another person might stretch it out over 2 weeks. You see what I mean? However, like I said, to get through the entire podcast curriculum, it is no more than an hour. I make sure my lessons are short, impactful, and digestible. And if that's what you're asking, so let me know if you have any follow up on that. Is 1,000 too little? Probably. I like to over deliver, Joyce. I like to over deliver. Trust me. Siobhan says, can this still work if I don't have an existing podcast or any social presence yet? Yes, it can still work. Again, I have so many students who come in and start from scratch. And as you have seen, there are students that come in with one podcast and again, completely pivot. So Lori came in, had a whole brand around her blog, My American Melting Pot. That's why she was so hesitant to let it go. She was like, I spent so many hours building this up, but she eventually realized she needed to scrap it. So she started from scratch, and look at the impact of what she's built now. The social presence is just enough. It's just right for her people to find her. She has retreats. She has one-on-one clients. She has a group coaching clients. It is just amazing what she's been able to do. So none of that matters right now. What matters is getting clear on how to package the topics that you have in your mind, how to refine them down into a way that makes sense. So you say, I want to start my podcast. My area of expertise is child development and early learning. Ooh, I love that. I actually would love to talk to you more about that because I'm a mom of 2, and one of my children is neurodiverse. So yeah, this is something that I can definitely uniquely also speak to and help you develop as a potential listener, right? So, yeah, come on down. Let's work together. I would love to coach you through that. And for anyone else, if I didn't get to your question, let me just scroll through the chat really quickly before I hop off to make sure I didn't miss anything. But you can also put it over in Q&A if I missed it. Jonathan says, my major love is music, but how do you monetize that? My other main love is DEI, but has it been decimated? So that's the whole point of getting clear on your topic. So we're all multi-passionate. There are other things that I enjoy talking about. I like interior design, I like hair, but it doesn't mean everything needs to be a podcast. So we're going to get you clear on what can I talk about long term? What would I not care about talking about forever? And what would I be okay with talking about even before I start getting paid for it? Right. So these are some of the things we have to start with. If it's music, within music, there's so much that you could be talking about. Like when you say music, I don't even know which aspect you mean, right? So we have to really drill that down, and then you can get some clarity on what kind of podcast you would start. But having multi passions is normal. And DEI, there's a lot to talk about in DEI. So no, it hasn't been decimated. And we would talk about the strategy for approaching such a term that's been co-opted, right? And then lastly, my main love is building peaceful communities, but it looks like this won't be possible to achieve that until we wait 4 more years. Can any of this be podcasted? All of it can be podcasted. And I think the concept of peaceful communities is so needed right now. And I want you to think big. When you think about a podcast like that, like I picture you talking to President Obama, honestly. Like I want you to think big on the impact of the platform that you'll be creating and the conversations that you want to have. And there's a space and a need for it. And it's coming to you for a reason. If there's anything popping up in any of your minds, do not discount that. It is coming to you for a reason. You're like, why isn't everyone talking about this? Because they weren't equipped with the same gift that you've been given. You have been given that gift, so you need to act on it. You need to start that show. When I was looking for side hustle shows that talk to Black women or people who side hustle while still working full time, I wasn't finding that. I was dumbfounded. Like, why is no one talking about this? Not everyone can quit their job to move to Silicon Valley and, live frat bro style and start their startup. Like, that is not realistic. And no one was talking about it. And I realized, duh, you need to start it. And look where it has taken me. So you have the ideas for a reason. Now let's get you some clarity. Jonathan says you can sell ice to an Eskimo. You're too funny. Y'all are too funny. I'm going to follow up with all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining today. Again, shout out to everyone on the replay. It has been my pleasure and my honor and my privilege to teach you today. And if you have any follow-up questions, just email me hi@sidehustlepro.co. All right. And with that, take care, everyone. No, thank you. Thank you, everyone.